Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the afternoon session of the 10th Annual Roosevelt Reading Festival. My name is Bob Clark. I'm the Supervisory Archivist here at the Franklin D. Roosevelt Library, and I can't believe it's been 10 years. That's the 10th anniversary of the Henry A. Wallace Center, this wonderful building that allows us to host this event every year. And this is one of my favorite events because it gets to showcase what we do in the archives of the Roosevelt Library, which is assist great writers and historians like the person you're about to hear on their work. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping matters. The first is, will everyone please take out your cell phones, pagers, things that beep and whistle and moan, and turn them off so that our program isn't interrupted? Thank you. The second thing is I want to thank C-SPAN for being here broadcasting this event today. They are always great supporters of the public programs that we do here at the Roosevelt Library, and we appreciate it very much. Let me tell you a little bit of the format of the session for those of you who haven't been to a reading festival before. I'm going to introduce our speaker, and then she's going to talk for 40 minutes or so, after which, if time permits, we'll take questions, but if not, I'm sure that Susan would be happy to speak with you one-on-one as she signs books out at the New Deal store, where after you hear her wonderful discussion, you will all want to flee the room so that you can buy one for her to sign. Susan Dunn is the author of 1940, FDR, Wilkie, Lindbergh, Hitler, The Election Amid the Storm. She is the Parrish Third Century Professor of Humanities at Williams College, where she has been teaching since 1973. She graduated from Smith College and has a PhD from Harvard University. She has written and edited a dozen books that focus on two key periods in American history, the founding period and the presidency of Franklin Roosevelt. Dunn is also the author of Roosevelt's Purge, How FDR Fought to Change the Democratic Party, which is a fantastic book. You should read that too. And she is co-author with Pulitzer Prize-winning author James McGregor Burns of The Three Roosevelts, Patrician Leaders Who Transformed America. She lives in Williamstown, Massachusetts with Jim Burns and their dog Roosevelt. And I know that just on a personal note, for one thing, Susan is a great friend of the library and of me as well, but James McGregor Burns is the Dean of Roosevelt Scholars. He wrote the first full 2-volume biography of Roosevelt many, many years ago, and I know that he's back in Williamstown, Massachusetts, and he will be watching this program later, so we want to send our best to him in Williamstown, Massachusetts. So with that, I'm pleased to introduce Susan Dunn.
Thank you, Bob. It's a great treat and a great privilege to be speaking in this magical place of Hyde Park. Have you ever seen Alfred Hitchcock's movie, Foreign Correspondent, starring Joel McCrea and Herbert Marshall? Many of my students haven't heard of Alfred Hitchcock or Joel McCrea, but you may know them. Foreign Correspondent made its debut in the summer of 1940. In the first scene, a newspaper editor asks his flippant, lackadaisical reporter, Johnny Jones, a question. "What's your opinion of the present European crisis, Mr. Jones?" "What crisis?" says the reporter, played by Joel McCrea. "I'm referring to the war, Mr. Jones." "Oh, that. Well, to tell you the truth, I haven't given it much thought." "You don't keep up with our foreign news, do you?" "Well, how would you like to cover the biggest story in the world today?" "Give me an expense account and I'll cover anything." "You'll get an expense account. What Europe needs is a fresh, unused mind. You think you can dig up some news in Europe? I'll be happy to try, sir." Later, there are suspenseful encounters with Nazi saboteurs in Dutch windmills and an amazing scene of an assassination that takes place in a heavy rain on the steps of the Peace Palace in Amsterdam. And finally, Joel McCrea winds up in London, just when German bombers are wreaking havoc on that city. In the last scene of the movie, Johnny Jones is no longer that flippant, detached reporter. Instead, in the style of radio correspondent Edward R. Murrow, he speaks seriously to Americans on a radio hookup from London. "Hello, America," he says to the radio audience back home. I've been watching a part of the world being blown to pieces, a part of the world as nice as Vermont, Ohio, Virginia, and California, and Illinois. All that noise you hear isn't static, it's death coming to London. You can hear the bombs falling on the streets and the homes. This is a big story. You're part of it. It's too late to do anything here except stand in the dark and let them come. It's as if the lights were out everywhere except in America. Keep those lights burning. Cover them with steel, ring them with guns, build a canopy of battleships and bombing planes around them. Hello, America. Hang on to your lights. They're the only lights left in the world. Hitchcock got it right. Hitler's Nazi army and air force had already crushed Norway, Denmark, Holland, Belgium, and France. Great Britain was left standing alone. And in August of 1940, the Battle of Britain began. Almost every night until May 1941, Luftwaffe planes would drop tens of thousands of tons of bombs over London, Liverpool, Coventry, Birmingham, Southampton, Bristol, and other industrial cities and ports. Everything that we value most in life stood on the brink of annihilation. The essence of Judeo-Christian morality, the humanism of Western civilization, the precious legacy of the Enlightenment, and Thomas Jefferson's immortal affirmation of the inalienable human rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we also value the survival of Great Britain. In 1789, Alexander Hamilton said, "We think in English." With that brief statement, he encapsulated the profound intellectual and cultural ties that bind the United States and Britain. In 1940, the fate of the world hung on the United States. And that summer, Republicans and Democrats would hold their conventions in preparation for the November presidential election. So what are conventions? Conventions are about bands playing, delegates parading through the aisles, supporters cheering, and politicians speechifying. But at both of the conventions that took place in the summer of 1940, there was an elephant in the hall. Not the Republican elephant, but the Nazi elephant. And there was an uninvited guest, and his name was Adolf Hitler. The question on everyone's mind was whether FDR wanted the party nomination again in 1940, and he refused to give a clear answer. "Mr. President, would you tell us now if you'd accept a third term?" one reporter asked him point blank. "Put on a dunce cap and go stand in the corner," FDR replied with a laugh. Not even the members of his own family knew what his real intentions were. Of course, one question was whether FDR deserved another 4 years in the White House. His Attorney General, Robert Jackson, was convinced that war, and war alone, compelled FDR to run for an unprecedented third term. Jackson believed that at least as far as domestic policy was concerned, the president had already pulled everything out of his New Deal bag of tricks. Only the foreign crisis justified a possible third term. Of course, FDR's own ambition also played a role. Some Democrats had accused him of torpedoing all the other potential candidates, but in fact, the wily president had done the opposite. He encouraged them all to run. Secretary of State Cordell Hull, former Indiana Governor Paul McNutt, Senate Majority Leader Alben Barkley, New York Governor Herbert Lehman, and even his isolationist ambassador to Great Britain, Joseph Kennedy, who salivated at the idea of occupying the White House. FDR cheerfully welcomed them all into the race, and then let them twist and dangle